too. They're not immune to toxic people. They're not better at reading minds. And they don't possess some secret ability to avoid difficult personalities. What makes them different is how they respond. Instead of trying to change toxic people, they change the way they engage with them. They understand a psychological truth that most people learn far too late. Your peace is determined less by who enters your life and more by who you allow to stay in it. In today's world, we're constantly told to be patient, forgiving, and understanding. Those qualities matter. They help build meaningful relationships. But what happens when patience becomes permission? When forgiveness becomes an excuse for repeated disrespect? Or when understanding someone else's pain comes at the cost of ignoring your own? Those are difficult questions, and psychology offers some powerful answers. By the end of this video, you'll understand the habits emotionally intelligent people use to protect themselves from manipulation, guilt, and emotional exhaustion, without becoming cold, angry, or disconnected. Some of these habits may challenge the way you've always viewed relationships. Others may completely change how you deal with difficult people from this day forward. So stay with me, because the final lesson isn't just about avoiding toxic people. It's about reclaiming your peace. Before we talk about avoiding toxic people, we need to understand why they affect us in the first place. Human beings are deeply social creatures. From the moment we're born, our brains are wired to seek connection. Throughout history, belonging to a group wasn't just comforting, it was essential for survival. That instinct still exists today. We naturally want to be accepted. We want people to like us. We want harmony in our relationships. And because of that, many of us tolerate behavior that slowly damages our emotional well-being. Not because we're weak, but because our brains often prioritize connection over self-protection. This is exactly what toxic people take advantage of. Some do it intentionally. Others may not even realize the impact they have. Either way, the result is often the same. You begin carrying stress that doesn't belong to you. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You overthink simple conversations. And gradually, your emotional energy becomes consumed by someone else's behavior. The problem isn't that you care. The problem is caring without healthy limits. Emotionally intelligent people understand that compassion and boundaries are not opposites. In fact, they work best together. Which brings us to the first habit smart people develop. Imagine meeting someone who disappoints you. They forget an important commitment. They speak harshly during an argument. Later, they apologize. Most healthy relationships include moments like this. Nobody is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. But here's where emotionally intelligent people begin paying close attention. They don't judge someone based on one isolated event. They watch for patterns. Because psychology consistently shows that repeated behavior is often a stronger predictor of future actions than repeated promises. Anyone can say, "I'm sorry." Anyone can promise to change. The real question is, do their actions change after the apology? Think about it. If someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, breaks their promises, or shifts blame every time a problem arises, what are they teaching you? They're teaching you what you can expect in the future. Smart people understand that consistency reveals character more clearly than words ever can. This doesn't mean becoming suspicious of everyone. It means becoming observant. Instead of asking, "What did they say?" ask, "What have they consistently done?" That single shift changes everything. Imagine a friend who cancels plans once because of an emergency. That's understandable. Now imagine someone who cancels at the last minute every single time, only to ask for favors whenever they need help. At some point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The same is true in workplaces, families, friendships, and romantic relationships. Patterns tell a story. Promises often tell you what someone wishes were true. Actions tell you what is true. Emotionally intelligent people don't become cynical. They simply stop confusing hope with evidence. And that one habit protects them from years of disappointment. But recognizing unhealthy patterns is only the beginning. Because once you've identified toxic behavior, you're faced with a much harder challenge. How do you protect yourself without becoming bitter? How do you set limits without feeling guilty? And why do so many kind, intelligent people struggle to say one simple word? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Why is it so difficult to say no? For many people, the answer has nothing to do with confidence. It has everything to do with fear. The fear of disappointing someone. The fear of looking selfish. The fear of creating conflict. Or perhaps the deepest fear of all, the fear of being rejected. From childhood, many of us are praised for being polite, helpful, and accommodating. We're taught to share, to cooperate, and to put others first. These are valuable lessons, but somewhere along the way, many people absorb another message without realizing it. Good people always make other people happy. At first glance, that idea seems harmless. But over time, it can become incredibly dangerous. Because if your definition of being good depends on keeping everyone else comfortable, you'll eventually start sacrificing your own emotional well-being. And that's exactly where toxic people thrive. Imagine owning a beautiful house. You carefully lock the doors at night. You close the windows before leaving. You decide who is invited inside. Does that make you rude? Of course not. It makes you responsible. Now think about your emotional life. Your time, your attention, your energy, your peace of mind. These are even more valuable than your possessions. Yet many people protect their homes better than they protect their own emotional health. Emotionally intelligent people understand a simple truth. Every healthy relationship requires healthy boundaries. A boundary isn't about controlling another person's behavior. It's about deciding what behavior you are willing to accept. That's an important distinction. Many people think boundaries sound like demands. They're not. A demand tries to control someone else. A boundary defines how you will respond. For example, instead of saying, "You have to stop yelling," a healthy boundary sounds like, "If this conversation becomes disrespectful, I'm going to end it until we can talk calmly." Notice the difference. The focus isn't on changing the other person. The focus is on protecting your own well-being. And that's why boundaries are so effective. They return your attention to the one thing you can always control, your own actions. Here's something many people don't realize. Healthy people usually respect boundaries. Toxic people often challenge them. Why? Because boundaries change the balance of power. Someone who benefits from your unlimited availability won't enjoy hearing the word no. Someone who expects instant replies may suddenly accuse you of being distant. Someone who relies on guilt may tell you that you've changed. In reality, you haven't become cruel. You've simply become aware of your limits. And that can feel uncomfortable for both people. Psychologists sometimes describe this reaction as resistance to change. When a familiar pattern is disrupted, people who benefited from that pattern may push back. That doesn't automatically make them bad people. But it does tell you something important. Pay attention to how someone responds when you set a respectful boundary. Do they listen? Do they seek understanding? Or do they criticize, guilt trip, or pressure you into changing your mind? Their response often reveals more about the relationship than the boundary itself. One of the shortest words in the English language is also one of the most powerful. No, it doesn't require anger. It doesn't require a long explanation. And it certainly doesn't require guilt. Many emotionally intelligent people have learned that every unnecessary explanation creates another opportunity for manipulation. Imagine this conversation. Can you help me this weekend? I'm sorry, I already have plans. But what plans? Well, I was going to. Before you know it, you're defending your schedule instead of honoring it. Now compare that to a different response. I appreciate you asking, but I won't be able to. Then stop. Silence can be surprisingly powerful. You don't owe everyone a detailed justification for protecting your time. Confidence often speaks in fewer words. Imagine two employees working in the same office. The first says yes to every request. Extra shifts, last-minute projects, covering for coworkers. At first, everyone praises this person's dedication. But over time, something changes. People stop asking whether they're available. They simply assume they will say yes. The second employee is equally hardworking, but they communicate clearly. They help when they genuinely can. They politely decline when they can't. Surprisingly, this person often earns more respect. Why? Because consistency builds trust. People know where they stand. Healthy boundaries don't reduce respect. They create it. Take a moment to ask yourself, how many times have you agreed to something you didn't want to do, simply because saying no felt uncomfortable? Now imagine what your life would look like if every yes came from genuine willingness instead of guilt. That's the freedom emotionally intelligent people create for themselves. Not by becoming selfish, but by becoming honest. Learning to recognize patterns and establish boundaries changes the way you experience relationships. But there's another challenge waiting. What happens when someone ignores those boundaries completely? What do smart people do when they encounter manipulation, emotional games, or endless arguments designed to wear them down? The answer may surprise you, because sometimes the strongest move isn't proving you're right. Sometimes it's refusing to play the game at all. The moment you begin setting healthy boundaries, something interesting often happens. Some people respect them immediately. Others don't. In fact, the people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries are often the ones who react the strongest when you finally establish them. At first, this reaction can be confusing. You might think, why are they upset? I was respectful, I explained myself calmly. But here's an important psychological insight. Not everyone is looking for understanding. Some people are looking for control. And that's where manipulation begins. Imagine sitting down to play a board game. You learn the rules. You make careful decisions. You play fairly. But halfway through the game, your opponent suddenly changes the rules. When you question it, they insist those were always the rules. No matter what you do, the game is impossible to win. Now replace the board game with a conversation. You explain your feelings calmly. Instead of listening, the other person changes the subject. You answer their new accusation. Then they bring up something that happened years ago. You defend yourself again. Suddenly, they're talking about something completely unrelated. Hours later, you've forgotten what the original conversation was even about. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. This is one of the most common patterns emotionally intelligent people learn to recognize. The goal isn't resolution. The goal is confusion. Human emotions are powerful. When we're calm, the logical parts of the brain work more effectively. We evaluate evidence. We think clearly. We solve problems. But when emotions become intense, especially anger, fear, or guilt, clear thinking becomes much harder. That's why some manipulative people don't actually want calm conversations. They want emotional reactions. If they can make you angry enough, you'll stop focusing on facts. If they can make you guilty enough, you'll begin apologizing for things that aren't your responsibility. If they can make you defensive enough, you'll spend your energy explaining yourself instead of recognizing what's really happening. Smart people understand this psychological shift. They notice the moment a conversation stops being productive and starts becoming emotional theater. And that's when they make a different choice. Instead of trying harder to prove they're right, they stop performing. Think about the last argument you witnessed. Did the person who spoke the loudest automatically have the strongest point? Probably not. Yet many people believe that walking away means losing. Emotionally intelligent people see it differently. They understand that some conversations have no finish line. No matter how many facts you present, the other person isn't interested in changing their perspective. They're interested in keeping you emotionally engaged. Why? Because as long as you're defending yourself, you're focused on them. You're spending your time, your attention, your emotional energy. And attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Smart people refuse to waste it. There's an old story about a fisherman sitting peacefully beside a river. A traveler approaches him and begins criticizing everything he's doing. You should fish harder. You should catch more. You should build a bigger business. The fisherman simply smiles. The traveler grows frustrated. He argues louder. He insults the fisherman. Still, the fisherman remains calm. Finally, the traveler asks, "Why aren't you defending yourself?" The fisherman replies, "Because not every invitation deserves to be accepted." That's a powerful lesson. An argument is often an invitation. You don't have to accept every invitation you receive. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. Healthy relationships require honest communication. Constructive disagreement helps people grow. The difference is intention. In a healthy discussion, both people are trying to understand. In a manipulative discussion, one person is trying to dominate. Once you recognize that difference, your response changes completely. Instead of asking, "How do I win this argument?" you begin asking, "Is this conversation worth my peace?" That single question has the power to transform your relationships. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's refusing to let someone else's behavior control your emotional state. Think about how much time you've spent replaying arguments in your mind. Hours, days, sometimes even years. Now imagine investing that same energy into your goals, your family, your health, or your dreams. Which investment is more likely to improve your life? Emotionally intelligent people make that choice consciously. They don't chase every conflict. They choose where their attention belongs. And in doing so, they protect something far more valuable than their pride. They protect their peace. But avoiding unnecessary arguments is only one part of the equation. Because some people don't need loud conflicts to drain your energy. They do it quietly, one conversation at a time. One criticism at a time. One subtle comment at a time. Before you realize it, you feel emotionally exhausted without knowing exactly why. So how do smart people recognize this invisible drain before it begins to affect their confidence, relationships, and mental well-being? That's where the next principle becomes essential. Imagine waking up every morning with a full battery. You feel motivated, focused, ready to take on the day. Now imagine that every time you interact with one particular person, that battery loses 10% of its charge. At first, you barely notice. But after weeks, months, or even years, you're constantly exhausted. Not because you're working harder, but because you're spending your emotional energy in the wrong places. This is one of the biggest differences between emotionally intelligent people and everyone else. They don't just manage their time. They manage their energy. Most people believe energy comes from sleep, food, or exercise. And while those things certainly matter, psychology tells us that our relationships have an enormous influence on how energized or drained we feel. Think about the people in your life. Some conversations leave you inspired. You walk away with new ideas, a lighter mood, and a renewed sense of possibility. Other conversations leave you feeling anxious, frustrated, or emotionally depleted. Nothing dramatic may have happened. No one shouted. No one argued. Yet somehow, you're left carrying a heaviness that wasn't there before. Emotionally intelligent people pay close attention to this feeling, because emotions often provide valuable information before logic catches up. Instead of asking, "Is this person technically toxic?" They ask something much simpler. How do I consistently feel after spending time with them? That question changes everything. If you repeatedly leave interactions feeling guilty, confused, nervous, or emotionally exhausted, your mind may be signaling that something in the relationship needs to change. Ignoring those signals doesn't make them disappear. It simply teaches your brain that your own emotional needs are less important than keeping someone else comfortable. Over time, that habit becomes incredibly costly. Imagine someone handed you 100 gold coins every morning. Whatever you didn't spend by midnight would disappear forever. Would you hand those coins to someone who constantly wasted them? Probably not. Yet every single day, you're given something even more valuable than money. Your attention. Once an hour has passed, you'll never get it back. That's why emotionally intelligent people become intentional about where they invest their focus. They understand that every unnecessary argument, every cycle of guilt, and every attempt to please someone who refuses to respect them comes at a price. Not just emotionally, but mentally, physically, even creatively. The more energy you spend surviving unhealthy relationships, the less energy remains for building a meaningful life. Ask yourself this question: who in your life gives you energy? And who quietly takes it away? The answer isn't always obvious. Sometimes the loudest person isn't the most draining. Sometimes it's the person who constantly makes you question yourself. The one who leaves you feeling as though you're never quite enough. Recognizing that pattern isn't selfish. It's awareness. And awareness is the first step toward change. One of the most dangerous qualities of emotional manipulation is that it rarely begins in obvious ways. It often starts with small moments. A guilt-filled comment, a subtle insult disguised as a joke, a compliment followed by criticism, or a request that somehow becomes your obligation. For example, after everything I've done for you, if you really cared, you would. I guess I'll just handle it myself. Notice what's happening. Instead of expressing a need directly, the person is attempting to influence your behavior through guilt. Healthy communication sounds different. It leaves room for honesty, for disagreement, for mutual respect. Manipulation leaves room for only one acceptable answer. The answer that benefits the manipulator. Smart people learn to pause before reacting. Instead of immediately apologizing or giving in, they ask themselves, am I making this decision because I truly want to, or because I feel emotionally pressured? That brief pause interrupts the cycle. It gives logic a chance to catch up with emotion. And often, that's all it takes to recognize what is really happening. Another common manipulation tactic is making you question your own perception. Imagine someone repeatedly dismisses your concerns. They say things like, "You're imagining it. That never happened. You're too sensitive." Eventually, you begin wondering whether your own memory can be trusted. This experience is often referred to as gaslighting. Its purpose isn't simply to win an argument. It's to make you doubt yourself enough that you stop trusting your own judgment. Emotionally intelligent people protect themselves by returning to observable facts. They ask, what actually happened? What evidence supports my memory? Would I tell a friend they were overreacting if this happened to them? These questions help separate reality from emotional confusion. And once you trust your own perception again, manipulation loses much of its power. At this point, you've learned how smart people recognize unhealthy patterns, establish clear boundaries, avoid emotional traps, protect their energy, and identify manipulation before it takes control. But perhaps the hardest lesson is still ahead. Because sometimes, the toxic person isn't a stranger. It's someone you've loved for years. Someone whose approval you've been chasing for most of your life. How do emotionally intelligent people let go of that need without becoming bitter? How do they choose peace over people-pleasing? And why do the happiest individuals seem completely comfortable with the fact that not everyone will like them? Those answers may be the most life-changing of all. Let's explore them in the final part of this journey. Perhaps the hardest truth about toxic relationships isn't learning how to recognize manipulation. It isn't setting boundaries, and it isn't walking away from endless arguments. The hardest truth is accepting that some people will never approve of you, no matter what you do. For many of us, this realization feels uncomfortable. Because from a young age, we're taught that being liked is a sign that we're doing something right. We learn to smile even when we're hurt, to stay quiet even when we disagree, to apologize just to keep the peace. Over time, pleasing others becomes a habit so automatic that we hardly notice it. But here's the problem. When your happiness depends on someone else's approval, you hand them the power to control your emotions. And that's exactly what emotionally intelligent people refuse to do. Imagine standing in front of a room filled with people. 99 of them smile and applaud your work. One person folds their arms and quietly shakes their head. Now ask yourself a question. Which face would your mind focus on? For most people, it wouldn't be the 99 smiling faces. It would be the one person who disapproved. This isn't because we're weak. It's because the human brain naturally pays more attention to potential threats than positive experiences. Psychologists often refer to this tendency as a negativity bias. Thousands of years ago, paying attention to danger helped our ancestors survive. Today, that same instinct can cause us to dwell on criticism far longer than praise. A single negative comment online can overshadow hundreds of encouraging messages. One difficult relationship can dominate our thoughts despite many healthy ones. Smart people understand this bias. They recognize that their brains aren't always giving them an accurate picture of reality. Instead of obsessing over the one voice that disapproves, they consciously shift their attention toward what truly matters. Not perfection, not popularity, but purpose. At first, people-pleasing feels rewarding. You avoid conflict. Others describe you as kind and dependable. You become the person everyone can count on. But beneath the surface, something slowly begins to change. You start saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. You cancel your own plans to meet other people's expectations. You stay silent when your values are challenged. And little by little, you begin losing touch with your authentic self. One day, you wake up feeling exhausted. Not because you've been working too hard, but because you've been pretending for too long. Pretending you're okay. Pretending you're not hurt. Pretending you don't mind. The greatest danger of people-pleasing isn't that others take advantage of you. It's that you slowly stop listening to your own needs. Emotionally intelligent people understand that kindness without honesty eventually becomes resentment. They know that every dishonest yes is often a hidden no to themselves. There's an old story about a sculptor who spent months creating a beautiful statue. When he finally displayed it in the town square, people gathered to admire his work. One visitor suggested changing the face. Another disliked the hands. Someone else wanted different clothing. The sculptor returned home and altered the statue to satisfy each opinion. The next morning, more people criticized the new version. Again, he changed it. This continued for weeks. Eventually, the statue no longer resembled his original vision. It had become a collection of other people's preferences. The sculptor looked at his work and realized something important. Trying to satisfy, everyone had caused him to lose what made the statue beautiful in the first place. Many people live their lives the same way. They shape their personalities around other people's expectations until they can no longer remember who they truly are. Smart people refuse to become sculptures carved by public opinion. They listen to feedback. They remain humble. But they don't abandon their values every time someone disagrees with them. Imagine two compasses. One changes direction every time someone nearby expresses an opinion. The other always points toward true north. Which compass would you trust? Your values are your true north. They're the principles that guide your decisions when emotions become overwhelming. Honesty, respect, integrity, compassion, responsibility. When your choices are based on these values instead of constant validation, something remarkable happens. Criticism still hurts. Rejection still stings. But neither one has the power to define who you are. That's the quiet confidence emotionally intelligent people possess. Not because they're fearless, but because they know where they're headed. And they refuse to let every passing opinion change their direction. Think about someone you admire deeply. Perhaps a teacher, a mentor, an author, or a leader. Now ask yourself this: did everyone agree with them? Almost certainly not. Every person who chooses to live with authenticity will eventually face criticism. The goal isn't to eliminate criticism. The goal is to make sure it's not steering your life. Once you stop chasing approval, something unexpected begins to happen. Your relationships become healthier. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. And perhaps most importantly, you discover that peace doesn't come from winning every argument or changing every toxic person. It comes from deciding that your inner calm is worth protecting. But there is one final lesson that brings everything together. A lesson about ego, forgiveness, and the surprising freedom that comes from letting go. And that lesson has the power to transform not only your relationships, but your entire life. There comes a moment in almost every difficult relationship when you face a choice. Not a choice between right and wrong. Not a choice between staying or leaving. But a quieter, more personal choice. You must decide whether you want to protect your ego or protect your peace. At first, those two goals can seem identical. When someone insults you, your ego wants to respond. When someone spreads rumors, your ego wants to defend itself. When someone misunderstands your intentions, your ego wants to explain every detail until they finally admit you were right. But life has a way of teaching a different lesson. The longer you live, the more you realize that being understood by everyone is impossible. Some people will misunderstand you because they only hear what confirms their beliefs. Some will judge you based on a single moment instead of your entire character. Others may simply be carrying pain that has nothing to do with you. Trying to change every opinion is like trying to calm the ocean by pushing against the waves. You will only exhaust yourself. Emotionally intelligent people understand something that takes many of us years to learn. Not every battle deserves your attention. Sometimes the strongest response is not another argument. Sometimes it is a calm exit. Sometimes it is silence. And sometimes it is choosing to invest your energy somewhere far more meaningful. Imagine walking through life with a backpack. Every time someone lies to you, you place a stone inside. Every betrayal adds another. Every unresolved argument. Every hurtful comment. Every disappointment. At first, the backpack feels light. You barely notice the extra weight. But year after year, it grows heavier. Eventually, even simple steps become difficult. The truth is, many people aren't exhausted because life is unusually hard. They're exhausted because they're carrying emotional burdens they were never meant to keep. Resentment, bitterness, the need to prove themselves, the hope that one more conversation will finally change someone who has no desire to change. Wise people eventually stop collecting stones, not because the pain wasn't real, but because they realize they cannot move forward while carrying every wound from the past. Letting go is not pretending something never happened. It is choosing not to let yesterday's pain control tomorrow's peace. One of the most freeing ideas in psychology is surprisingly simple. There are only two categories in life: things you can control and things you cannot. You can control your words, your choices, your habits, your attitude, your response. You cannot control another person's honesty. You cannot force respect. You cannot make someone apologize. You cannot convince everyone to see you fairly. The more time you spend fighting what you cannot control, the less time you have to improve what you can. Emotionally intelligent people understand this deeply. Instead of asking, "How do I change this person?" they ask, "How do I become the kind of person who no longer depends on their approval?" That single question shifts your focus from frustration to growth. And growth is always more rewarding than revenge. Imagine two gardeners. Both discover weeds growing in their gardens. The first gardener spends every day shouting at the weeds, pulling at them in frustration, complaining that they exist. The second gardener removes what can be removed, then spends the rest of the day watering healthy plants. Months later, the difference is impossible to ignore. One garden is filled with flowers. The other is filled with anger. Life works the same way. Toxic people will always exist. You cannot eliminate every difficult person you meet, but you can decide what receives most of your attention. Whatever you water grows. If you constantly feed resentment, resentment grows. If you invest in wisdom, healthy relationships, meaningful work, and personal growth, those things begin to flourish instead. The quality of your life is shaped not only by the people around you, but by what you choose to nurture within yourself. Final reflection. Take a moment and think about the people who leave you feeling calm. Notice how different they are. They don't need to control every conversation. They don't punish you for having boundaries. They don't make you earn basic respect. They create space for honesty. They celebrate your successes instead of competing with them. They make your life feel lighter, not heavier. Now ask yourself one final question. Am I becoming that kind of person for others? Because avoiding toxic people is only half the journey. The other half is becoming someone who brings peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, and encouragement instead of fear. When you become that person, something remarkable happens. You naturally begin attracting healthier relationships. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you've learned to recognize what truly deserves a place in it. Closing. Remember the 7 principles we've explored today. Observe patterns instead of promises. Set boundaries with confidence. Refuse to play manipulation games. Protect your emotional energy. Recognize guilt and gaslighting for what they are. Stop chasing everyone's approval. And above all, choose peace over ego. These habits won't remove every difficult person from your life, but they will change the way those people affect you. And sometimes that's the greatest form of freedom, because intelligence isn't measured only by what you know. It's measured by the decisions you make every single day about where your time, attention, and heart belong. Your peace is valuable. Protect it. Your energy is limited. Invest it wisely. And your life is far too precious to spend trying to convince the wrong people to see your worth. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video helped you see toxic relationships from a new perspective, leave a comment sharing which principle resonated with you the most. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you enjoy thoughtful videos about psychology, emotional intelligence, and personal growth, subscribe and join us for the next journey. Until then, take care of your mind, protect your peace, and never forget that one of the smartest decisions you'll ever make is choosing the people and the habits that help you become your best self.